we're gonna make a computer model of Half-Life. So typically when we do this lab, we have chips or pennies, and then dice. And so the pennies, like let's say heads up is that the atom decays, tails up is the atom does not decay, and then you sort it that way, and you keep the atoms that are around. What we're going to do is we're going to simulate that in our computer model. So I'm going to walk you through quite a few calculations here, teach you a little more about Excel because it really is a handy tool, and you can get pretty good jobs working with just Excel. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to do like pennies, right? So if you flip a coin, it's either going to be heads up or it's going to be tails up. So there's a 50% chance that you'll, not really a 50% chance, but you would think a 50% chance that you would get heads or tails, right? So we're going to simulate that. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to have the computer, Excel, pick a random number between 1 and 2. So the way that you do that, you hit the equal sign here, and then we're going to say rand, and that's random, right? And then between, between, so random between, and then we're going to do a parentheses. So random between is going to pick a number from, you can see there, from the bottom to the top. So 1 is our lowest number, 2 is going to be our highest number. So in other words, Excel is going to pick either 1 or 2. All right. Now, whenever we do this in class, that's similar to a penny, a coin toss, right? It's either going to be heads, 1, or tails, 2, right? So if I hit that, you'll see that it's 2. And then if I come up here to the formulas right here, and then I hit calculate now, you'll see that it changes sometimes, sometimes not, right? So when we do this in class, we use 64 pennies. We don't use pennies, we use plastic counters because pennies are really loud. So I'm going to drag this on down to the 64 to represent our 64 pennies. So there you go, right? Now, what we really want to be able to do is make this pretty easy for ourselves. And so we want to count how many pennies. So again, each one of these represents pennies. We want to count how many pennies are actually there, right? So there's a couple different ways that you can do that. The first way you can do that is you can just physically count them, right? We don't want to do that because we're using Excel. So we're gonna have it count for us. So we're gonna hit equals, right? And then we can count a couple different things. You can see there count a, count blank, count if, count ifs. What we're going to end up using is count blank, right? And what that does is that counts how many blanks, right? So I'm going to open parentheses, and then I'm going to highlight all the boxes that I want it to count. And so I'm going to highlight 1 through 64 in this case, all the way down to 64, right? And then I'm going to close off the parentheses and hit equal. Now, notice it says 0. That it's true, none of those boxes are blank. So instead of that, I want to know how many atoms are left, or how many of these boxes are left. So up in this equation, I'm going to hit 64, the number of pennies that we have, minus that count blank number, and that'll tell me how many atoms are remaining. So right there, that's the number of atoms remaining, 64, right? Okay, now, that's time 0, right? We shake them, and then this is what we get. And now we have to say either the number 1 is decay or the number 2 is decay. And it doesn't matter which one you pick, right? But we're gonna pick one of those. And if that atom decayed, it's no longer there. All right, so we're going to say equals if. So now this is an if statement, and we're going to say it's either A or B, or in this case, it's either 1 or 2, right? So let's go ahead and pick 1 since I have a 1 there in front of me. If this, oh, I gotta, hold on a second. If, parentheses, this equals 1, I want to leave it blank. That's 2 quotes. I want to leave it blank. If not, if it's not 1, I want to, again, have it pick a random number between 1 and 2. Right? And that's all I want it to do. And that's great, right? So look right here. Oh, let's go ahead and drag this down. So I'll go ahead and drag this down to the 64 right there. Okay, so that represents my 64 dice. So now take a look. Since this is a 1, this is blank, right? Because we're saying that once if it's a 1, it decays, right? So it's gone. We put it off to the side, so it's no longer there. If it doesn't decay, if it's a 2, we still use that, and so we use it again here. So now imagine if these were pennies, right? We shake the pennies, we throw them on the table. Everything that heads up, or 1, everything that's heads up, we put off to the side, right? Those are the atoms that decayed. I only want the pennies that are tails up, or for me, I only want the 2s. So now notice, anything that's a 1, there's a blank space, right? And that's exactly what we want, but there's a problem with this formula. Let me show you this problem. So here's the deal. If this atom decayed, it cannot come back to life in the next row, right? It can't do that. But the problem with our formula as it is written, going down to 64 and highlight that, I'm going to just take it one more, is watch, right? So here's a great example. That's a 1, so that penny's gone, but now all of a sudden it came back to life. It undecayed, and it can't do that, right? So I hit Control Z to delete that. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to modify this formula, right? So this is only dependent upon A1, right? If A1 is 1, leave it blank. Well, we actually need more than that. So we're going to say if, parentheses, or, parentheses. So now this is if either that cell, A1, is 1, or, I'm on the other side of the comma there, that cell, that one, is blank, then I want to leave it blank. Right? And if not, if that, I want to leave it blank. And if not, there. So, and I'll show you that formula here in a second again. Okay, so now take a look. I'm going to highlight down to 64. Okay, so that's that. And then I'm going to just move it over 1. Now look. Oh, it didn't work. What didn't work? Oh, I know what I did do. Okay, sorry. Never mind. Control Z. All right, go back to this. This is my formula. I got to drag this down. I forgot to drag it down. Sorry about that. So now, okay. So now I'm going to drag it over 1 and watch. Okay, we'll see if this works. Okay, so in this case, this is a 2. That atom is still there. So now it's a 1. As soon as it's a 1, that atom decays. And so it's blank. Works great. This one, that's a 1. That atom has decayed, so it's blank. The next row has to be a blank as well. So let me show you that equation again. Let me show you this formula one more time. Okay, I'm up here, right? If, parentheses, or. Okay, so now the if statement depends upon what you say next. We say either A1 is equal to 1, leave it blank. Or if A1 is blank, leave it blank, right? Now, if neither of those are true, I'm going to pick a random number between 1 and 2. Okay? Now, let's go on down here to the bottom because I want this to count again. So that's 64 minus that, 64 minus that value, and then 64 again minus that value, right? So it keeps counting for me. And so all I want to do is I'm going to keep going until I have no more atoms left. So again, if you visualize pennies and I'm shaking them, heads up, I put them off to the side. All the pennies that are left, I shake them again and I throw them on the table. Anything that's heads up, I put off to the side, and I keep on doing that. In this case, if it's a 2, I keep on rolling it, right? If it's a 1, I pull it off to the side. Okay? So what I can do now is I can take this row right here, and I'm going to highlight it all the way down to my count. Remember, my count is in number 65. And I'm just going to drag it out here until about Z. Maybe. Oh, that was way too far. I'm going to drag it out here until about column Z, just to make sure I always have 0. So there, look, 0, that's what I want to go to. I'm going to go to 0. Now, in this case, with only 1s and 2s, you're not really going to go past, I would say, maybe M or N. But just to be careful, that's what I did. Now, what I want out of this, all of this, I want this count down here, okay? So, at time 0, which is A, letter A, at time 0, there were 64 atoms remaining, right? I rolled them again, or I rolled them, I should say. 31 of them decayed. 64 minus 33. 31 of them decayed. I put them off to the side, right? And I took those 33 and I rolled them again. Threw them on the table. Now, 17 of them decayed. There's 16 left. There's 7 left. There's 4 left. There's 2 left. There's 1 left. Now there are none left. They all decayed. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and create a new sheet because I want this data. I want to keep a hold of this data, right? So I'm going to get a new sheet here. I'm going to show you a couple other things. Now, we're going to create our data table here, okay? And for our data table, we basically have one area right here, B2. We're going to call that time, okay? And we're only going to have one of those. And we're going to start at time 0, 1, 2, 3, and we'll fill that in as we go, okay? Now, right here, this is the number of atoms remaining. And we're going to call that 1 because we're going to have a couple of those. So I'm going to go ahead and make that into a table. So I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to insert and I'm going to hit table. Okay. So there you go. Now, I want to do a bunch of trials. Let's say we do 10 trials. Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now here's the cool thing about a table is that this is number of atoms remaining 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so it already counted for me. Now, what do I want to put in number of atoms remaining? I want this row 65 right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight that row, and I'm going to do that by clicking on A65, holding Shift and Control, and then hitting the right arrow key. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to hit Control C. No, it didn't work. I hit too many things here. Let's do that again. Shift, Control, okay, Control C, and notice that you got the wiggly line around there, the dash line. That lets you know that you have copied that. Right now, we don't want to paste that in here because we're going to have to flip it, and I'll show you why here. Let me show you. So I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to hit Control V. Oops, I'm not going to hit Control V. I'm going to go right here at O2. I'm going to go paste, and then paste values. Okay, so you see what happened there? So when I hit Control V, it pasted the formula, and we don't want that. So I'm going to hit Control Z there. I'm going to hit paste values. Okay, so the problem here is our data is horizontal. We don't want our data to be horizontal. We want our data to be vertical. So I'll show you how to fix that here in a second. I want to show you something though. So go back to sheet 1. It's still highlighted. You see that? It's still active. That lets you know that you still have this copied. So now I can come down here and I can hit paste values. And take a look. They're different numbers. Now, the reason why they're different numbers is because every time you have a keystroke, these numbers recalculate. So here, let me show you. If I hit a 5, recalculated. If I had a 6, recalculated. This random between doesn't stop. So, I'm going back to my 65. I got that all highlighted. I hit Control C. I can get all 10 trials, that's 2 trials, paste values, 3 trials, paste values, 4 trials, paste values, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We just simulated 10 trials, right? So now what we want to do is we want to get these horizontal rows into vertical columns. So the way that we're going to do that, we're going to go all the way till you have nothing but zeros. So right there, you see that right there? Nothing but zeros, okay? So I'm going to hit Control C. Now for you, that may be a different row, right? Or a different column. Just make sure you go all the way to the first column with nothing but zeros. And I Controlled copy that, right? So I want to put that data here, click, right? And I'm going to hit Paste. And now you see the one with the 2 arrows, this one right here? That's what I want to do. And that transposes the data. So now that takes that horizontal data and makes it vertical. So now I can go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, oops, 10, 11, 12. So there you go. Now the beauty of this is now we did 10 trials. What I really want, because we're going to make a graph, of course, what I really want is the average. So over here, my last column here, I'm going to type average. Okay? And I'm just going to hit equals, and then average, A-V-E-R-A-G-E, open parentheses. I'm going to highlight, not the time, just all of my number of atoms data. Right? And then I'm going to close it, and then, oop, it's all right there. Look at that. Isn't that nice? I think it's nice. So there you go. That's our first modeling, right? So again, what did we do? We made this table over here, and this table simulated us taking a penny and flipping it, right? And determining heads or tails. So it was either a 1 or a 2, right? And so we got all that data. Now, I'm going to take this, right? We're going to leave that because we're going to look at that here in a second. We want to make another one of these, right? So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this, Control C. I'm going to make a new sheet. So I'm going to hit the plus sign down here, and I'm going to hit Control V, right? And then I'm going to delete all this data. Actually, I'm going to delete all that data. I'm going to leave the average there. Okay, because now what we want to do is we want to compare those simulations. So this is the first simulation, 1 or 2. Either the atom decays or it does not decay. And that's a really simple simplification, a really basic simplification of what's going on. We have no way to predict which atom will actually decay, right? So we're going to make this a little more complex. And you can make this as complex as you want. What we typically do is we use pennies or 2 colored coins. And then we say, okay, that was either 1 or 2 heads or tails. Now let's use dice. So with dice, you have 1 through 6. So before we had a 50% chance of decaying. Now we got like a 16.5% chance of decaying, a 1 in 6, right? So we got to change our model just a little bit. Not too much, just a little bit. So the random between is no longer between 1 and 2. Now the random between is between 1 and 6. So I'm going to change that 2 to a 6. Okay, notice my first number is a 3 there. And then I'm going to drag that on down. We're still going to use 64 of those. I'm going to drag that on down to 64 right there. All right, so there we go. There's our numbers between 1 and 6. Looks great. We want to change this one as well. If you want to pick a different number other than 1, let's say 4. Right? Let's say 4 is our decay. So I roll the dice. I throw it out there. Okay, sorry. Had to pause the video for a second. So we roll the dice and we say 4. Every time a 4 comes up, we pull that dice off to the side, right? So instead of being 1, I'm going to go ahead and change this to 4, right? So every time 4 pops up, it's gone. So I need to make a few more changes here. So now it's going to pick 4, and then again I want this to pick a random number between 1 and 6. So let's change that to 6. Okay? And then I'm going to drag this on down to the 64. Okay, it still looks good, 64. And then I'm going to drag it on over to the right. Now this time it's going to take quite a bit to actually reach 0. So let's do this. Let's take B, drag it on down all the way to that 65 because we're going to have to make it go past our Z column. So let's roll this out here and let's make it go all the way to BA. Yeah, let's make it go to BA, which is quite a bit. Hopefully we'll get all 0. So look at that, 0, 0, 0. That means there's no atoms left. Where do we get our first atoms? Oh, there we got to 2, right? All the way to Y, and then there's no more atoms left after that. But I bet you, let's take a look at this. So if you go to formulas, if you hit this calculate now button, it'll recalculate. But look at that. See, now look, we're all the way to AE. So there's some atom is left here at AE. Where is it? Where's it? Oh, too far down. My computer's lagging here, as my son would say. Oh, it's right there. There's the atom right there. There you go. Okay, that's fine. So let's go back to the beginning of this 65 here, because row 65 is all I want, right? So I'm simulating this. Fantastic, great. It changes every time. There's my simulation. Let's go ahead and we're just going to highlight all of 65. So I'm here at A65. I hit Shift Control Right, and that's going to highlight everything, and then Control C, and that's going to copy it all, right? So we're going to go back to sheet 3 because that's where we're going to put our new data. So we're going to paste this, and so we're going to home, paste, values, right? And then I go down one. That's my first trial. Paste values, second trial. Paste values, third trial. Paste values, fourth trial. Paste values, fifth trial. Sixth. Seventh. Eighth. Ninth. Oop, I forgot to go down one. Ninth, is that 9? Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 9. Okay, so one more. Case values. There we go. Okay, now we're going to highlight all of these, and we're going to transpose them again. So again, how do we do that? I've clicked up here at the top of the data. Shift Control down. So Shift Control down arrow key. Shift Control right arrow key. And that's going to highlight all my data. Okay, so I'm going to hit Control C. That's going to copy it, and then we want to transpose that. All right, so I'm going to hit the paste, and then the arrows right there, and transpose it, and there it is. Now, I want to go, I only want down to the 0, the first 0. So here's the first 0. So all of this data I can delete. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. And I'll just delete. Okay, so there we go. I need my numbers, so I'm going to highlight this and just double click this. There we go. You can see I had to go all the way to 38 trials, or 38 times. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the graph. So here's the first one. Here's the first set of data. What we want to graph is time versus average. Okay, so that's going to be numbers versus numbers. That's an XY scatter plot. So I'm going to go insert. We want the line this time. Okay, and you can see there's a bunch of junk in there. So let's go ahead and hit select data, and let's remove all of it. Just make it easy on yourself. Just remove all of it. Okay, and then we're going to hit add. All right, so then what do we want on the x-axis? Time always goes on the x-axis. So there's that. All right, and then what do we want on the y-axis? That's where we want the average, just like that. And there's our graph. So that's the first one. That's going to be, that was for the pennies, right? Either it decayed or it did not decay. you know to move this, give your axes titles and all that other stuff. Let's go over to the pennies though. You know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to move this chart and I'm going to put it into sheet 3. Okay? And let's go to sheet 3. There's sheet 3. So this was our pennies, right? We're going to compare that. So I'm going to do chart here again. So insert, chart, smooth curve. So I want to do that. And again, all I want is the average and the time. So I'm going to go up to select data. I'm going to remove everything. Remove. And then I want to add what I want on my x-axis. I want my time. So here's my time. Going all the way up. Right there. And then what do I want on my y-axis? That's where I have my atoms remaining. All right, so here's my average. Average atoms remaining. Remember, it is an average, right? So, all right, and then we're gonna hit OK, and then there's our graph. Now, take a look. Remember, the top one, either it decayed or it didn't decay, right? The bottom one, there was a 1 in 6 chance, but don't those curves look an awful lot alike? That's because for a half-life, for the simple half-life that we're talking about here, it looks the same regardless of how long it takes it to actually achieve half-life, right? So these half-lives are different, but the curve is the same, right? Different amounts of time to get to half, but the curve is still the same. So you're going to put those graphs on your lab sheet and you're good to go. All right, thanks.